Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about John Hawkwood. As his name was claimed to be hard to pronounce by non-English contemporaries, there are many variations of it in the historical record. Some others call him Giovanni Acuto, meaning John the Astute, or John Sharp, referring to his cleverness or cunning. His exploits made him a man shrouded in myth in both England and Italy. Modern accounts like to present Hawkwood's upbringing as a poor peasant, but the fact tells a different story. Some sources claim that his father was a tanner, but the historical record has uncovered that Gilbert Hawkwood was a landowner of considerable wealth. His father had property in both Sibbald Hedingham and Fishenfield. Hawkwood began his career in the 100 Years' War in France under Edward III as a longbowman. It has been argued that he participated in both the Battle of Crécy in 1346 and the Battle of Poitiers in 1356. Although Hawkwood was knighted, there is no clear evidence by whom and where. Some sources claim he was knighted by the Black Prince after the Battle of Poitiers, but there is no historical record of this. In Italy, all major condottieri were classified as knights, which means the distinction in itself is ambiguous. So after the Treaty of Bretigny on May the 8th of 1360, many free companies began to form from a large number of mercenaries, both English and French, used during the war. The largest, the Great Company, later popularly known as White Company or the English Company, was formed in eastern France. Hawkwood joined this and eventually rose to be its commander. During Hawkwood's career, he was most often paid in gold florins, the most widely used currency of the time. In the 30 years that he served as a captain, Hawkwood's earnings ranged between 6,000 to 80,000 florins annually. During this time, the band moved to Champagne, Burgundy, and even Avignon. The company seized Pont Saint-Esprit near Avignon for 3 months, on the night of 28-29 December 1360. This blocked the collection point for taxes to pay the ransom for King John, who was taken in the Battle of Poitiers. Initially, Pope Innocent VI wrote to the group seeking peace, in a letter which identified Hawkwood as its leader. The group was unresponsive to the Pope's plea and continued to harass the fort, which resulted in the company's excommunication. In March 1361, the company and the Pope made peace for the deal of contracting to fight for him across the Pyrenees in Spain and across the Alps in Italy. With a promise of guaranteed military service while splitting the group, Hawkwood joined the group traveling to Italy. However, before the company arrived in Italy under papal orders, it joined the Marquis of Montferrat and his war against Amadeus VI, ruling Count of Savoy. It successfully attacked Sivigliano and Rivaloro and remained in Sauvignon territory for a year. Amadeus made his last stand in 1362 in Lanzo and lost to the company. The victory decided Marquis of Montferrat to sign a contract with the company on November 22, stating they would not fight the Visconti under him. Hawkwood and his company arrived in Italy during the power vacuum following the Great Schism, the papacy, and many different political figures were vying for the power. The Pisan-Florentine War was the beginning of Hawkwood's military career there, as he assumed command of the Pisan army in the winter of 1364-1465 at the age of almost 40. The Battle of Cassina determined the war. Before the war, John Hawkwood and the Pisan army had to meet in Malatesta. Hawkwood's tactics in the battle are what distinguished him as a military commander, even though he lost it. He took account of the terrain and conditions of the battlefield and positioned his army accordingly. However, the turning point came when the opposing commander ordered an enveloping move that cut Hawkwood off from the rest of his army. Hawkwood ordered his army to retreat. Modern perception of a battle is romanticized, as it is claimed as a heroic stand against the great odds. Yet the defeat is likely to have been due to the young undisciplined warriors fighting on the Hawkwood side. The second telling battle in the Hawkwood's career was Rubiera on the June 2nd of 1372, fought between papal forces at Benrabo Visconti. Both sides has concluded a formal truce, but in reality they were gathering more troops. Hawkwood and Visconti commanded a force of 1,000 lancers with no infantry. The papal forces were larger, 1,200 lancers, as well as infantry. Hawkwood outflanked and outmaneuvered his enemy and took most of the high-ranking officers captive. The victory shows Hawkwood's ability as a commander, although it had no significant political results and ended in the truce between Visconti and the Pope. One of Hawkwood's more important roles was in the Great Raid to Tuscany, which shows the connection to the Condottiere and the political prosperity of Italian state. The raid led directly to the war between Florence and Gregory XI and boosted Hawkwood's career in fame and wealth. Frustrated by the not being paid by the Pope, Hawkwood marched along the Via Emilia toward Tuscany and Florence. He continued to march through various territories such as Pisa, Siena, Arezzo, where he continually pressed for money. Many believe these raids were under orders from the Pope, and so they led to defensive league between Florence and Milan. Siena, Pisa, Lucca, Arezzo, and Queen of Joanna I of Naples soon followed and joined the defensive league against the Company and the Pope. No matter who was responsible for the raid, Hawkwood's raid proved to be casus belli and eventually led to the War of Eight Saints. In the War of Eight Saints in 1375, Hawkwood and his company began fighting the Pope Gregory XI against Florence. In December he went to Gitele Castello in order to put down a rebellion, but ended up capturing the city, which was not what the frustrated Pope had intended, but Hawkwood did so in an attempt to extract payment from the Pope. As a result, Gregory had little choice but to formally invest with him and return to uncompensated services. After capturing Città di Castello, Hawkwood rode to Faenza on February 12, 1376, on orders from papal governor to protection because he feared revolt. While at Faenza, Hawkwood attempted to lay siege to the neighboring town of Granarola, but was forced to retreat to Faenza. The papal governor opened the gates to Hawkwood, who once he held entered demanded that the inhabitants surrender their arms. Being unpaid by the Pope, they sacked the town instead. On hearing this, the opposite side, Florence, bribed Hawkwood not to fight and offered him a pension, as well as forgiveness for all betrayals and wrongdoings that he had committed against Florence. Yet Hawkwood remained with the Pope. Later he took part in the massacre of Cesena, to which he was called for help and forced to decree promising forgiveness to citizens who laid down their arms. Thus Hawkwood and his men joined in the attack of unarmed civilians. This was a turning point in Hawkwood's career, after which he left papal service and began working with Milan, Florence, and their allies. Hawkwood would eventually sign a contract with Florence after a quarrel with his father-in-law, Bernabo Visconti. After winning a battle against John Horvati, Hawkwood and Lutz Landau crossed paths with Horvatis and stole some prey from his hunt. Bernabo was unsettled with this, and consequently stripped Hawkwood of Milanese land received in his wife's dowry. Thereafter Florence hired Hawkwood, the Landau brothers and their company for 8 months, but the contract lasted much longer. By 1385, Hawkwood was over 60 years old, with a land holding in both Italy and England. Most of his duties under Florence were defensive, but he had not fought in a major battle for over a decade. However, in the winter 1385-1386, war broke out between Padua and Verona. The most important engagement in the war was the Battle of Castagnaro, which has been described as Hawkwood's the finest victory, one of the greatest feats of military prowess of the era. During the battle, Hawkwood saw that the Veronese left flank was exposed, and ordered his men to advance, in this way securing victory for him and his Paduan allies. The Paduan chronicles claim that as 4,620 fighting men were captured. St. John Hawkwood died on the March 17, 1394, at his home in Florence before he was able to retire to England. His funeral on March 20 was followed by an elaborate burial ceremony in Duomo. It is recorded that the town fathers furnished 3 banners with the arms of Lawrence and a helmet with a golden lion holding a lily in its claw as the chest. And his personal brigade sent 14 caparisoned warhorses, bearing the Englishman's personal banner, sword, shield, and helmet. As his reputation spread through Europe in his lifetime, even Richard II of England requested that Hawkwood's body be transferred back to the native land. Well, thank you very much for listening. Like it if you do, subscribe if you want to hear more. Thank you very much. Bye bye.